And just like that, we are underway. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Scripting Fridays on Agent Power Huddle. My name's Ed Laine. I'm a broker up here in Seattle, as you can probably tell by my background. Been in the business for 38 years, so I know some stuff, and I'm happy to share it. So today we're going to talk about tough conversations in a tough market. This is a very timely topic, so I'm excited to go through this with you, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas on things to say, but also some confidence to say them. So let me get up here and let me do this and this and start my share. I have too many screens. And wham, just like that, huh? How about that for grace? Gian, you can edit all that hesitation out. Good morning, Allison. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
So we're talking about tough conversations in a tough market. How about that? We're in a market that is quite unusual. You've heard the script that I've said before, which is for sellers. Hey, when they say, what's the market like? I say it's a surreal market because it's a seller's market by definition, but it's behaving like a buyer's market. I actually do a monthly mastermind, and this month's topic is what you see on the screen, which is tough conversations in a tough market, because we can't shy away, right? Our job is to communicate. And if you don't communicate with your clients, here's kind of a fundamental human trait. In the absence of information, our brains go to dark places, right? Think about it. If you were ever a child, or if you have children, right? If they don't come home on time and they miss their curfew or whatever, everybody says, like, you could have been in a ditch, right? That's just evidence that we think the worst without information. That's why it's so paramount that all of us talk to our clients on a weekly basis, because if we don't, they're assuming you're doing nothing. And we know that's not true, right? And a lot of the things that you do are not visible to your client. So you got to touch base with them every week, especially sellers, right? Buyers, it's a little less important, but you still want to talk to them weekly, because if they're not looking for houses, they might be assuming that you are, and hopefully you are, right? So you can't shy away from these conversations. So what I wanted to do today is just tackle a couple of scenarios that are kind of common in today's market and talk through what you should be thinking about, and literally some scripts that you can use, one for buyers, one for sellers. So let's start with the seller scenario. How many of you have listings that have been on the market for a while? How many of you have listings that probably could use a price reduction, right? The key is, and I'm preaching this every day to my sellers, is we need to be patient. So I'm not in a rush to do price reductions, but you can have scenarios where your seller sees their home on the market for 45 days. Showings have started to slow down and, to a trickle, but they insist it's a seller's market and refuse lowering the price. And they want to blame you. Like, it should have sold. I've got one listing. We haven't even had a single showing. That's the market giving us feedback, right? And that's how I frame it when I talk to my seller. Hey, the market's giving us feedback. And that feedback is that we're overpriced. So a couple things to think about when you're having this conversation is you want to sort of navigate what the market perception is, what the headlines say, versus what you're actually seeing, right? And I love to use data, because you can't really argue with data, right? When a seller says it's your marketing that's not driving the traffic, I can use data, show them impressions, show them number of times agents have sent the listing to their clients, and the client still didn't bother to come see it. That's feedback, right? And while I'm doing all of this, I do it with a tone of empathy. So I want to have sort of a forward-leaning posture because it's time sensitive, but I need to be an empath, because if they don't feel that I care about their bottom line, they're going to fire me. Plain and simple, right? So what does this sound like when I have this conversation? Well, it sounds like this. Hey, seller, I completely understand why you would want to hold out. You see headlines saying it's a seller's market. The reality is those headlines don't account for interest rate shock, affordability drops, and buyer hesitancy. The buyers who are in the market now are educated and they will not overpay. We've had great exposure. And then what I used to say and I say this to my seller, hey, I used to say this to my clients. There's an axiom in real estate, and that axiom is 30 days on the market or 20 showings with no offers means we're overpriced. But I don't say that anymore. I haven't said that all year. We've been patient though, and now traffic is slowing, which is the market giving us feedback. And here's the real key part of this. I want you guys to really tune in. I don't tell them, let's reduce the price immediately. I say, if we make a price adjustment next week, that gives them hope, right? Hey, I'm not saying we need to adjust it today, but if we don't have an offer by next Thursday, we should adjust it then. That gives them hope, because now they're thinking, oh man, I hope we get an offer this weekend, right? And if we make an adjustment next week, we can catch the next wave of serious buyers before we lose even more momentum. The choice is to be in the market or chase the market. And chasing always costs more in the end. And a lot of times I'll use my hands as like a visual aid, right? If I'm having a conversation with a seller about, the prudent list price, and they're saying, I want more or I want higher, I'll describe how chasing the market down is going to cost them a lot of money, right? Or another way to say it is, if we had started at a more reasonable price, it'll sell for more than if we start at it in a much higher price and then it languishes on the market and we're having to do price reductions, right? It's a little counterintuitive, but it's the facts, and you guys have all seen it. When you start exorbitantly high, you sell for less than you would have if you would have started at a more reasonable number. I have a great example. I had a listing that was an adult care facility, and the seller was actually a bank, and they had my opinion of value, and they had a second opinion of value. And the second opinion of value was $200,000 more than mine. And the asset manager called me and said, why are you trying to give away my asset? And I said, I'm not. I said, did your second opinion BPO, is what we call it in the REO world, did your second opinion BPO say that it was a 8-bedroom, 7-bathroom mansion? And she said, yeah. And I go, did they also mention that all those bathrooms are retrofitted for disabled people because this is an adult care facility and not a mansion? She said, no, they left that out. So she couldn't bring herself to mirror my BPO. She split the difference and listed it $100,000 above my BPO. And we sold for $25,000 under my BPO. But if she had started at my number, we would have gotten it. Does that make sense? So you probably have scenarios like that you can use when you're having these conversations as evidence. Like this is what will happen. I can give you a great example, right? Before I move on to the buyer's scenario, let's open it up to what other tough conversations are you guys having had with sellers? Anything? All right. Then let's dive into the buyer, shall we? And can you guys hear my dog going bananas right now? Okay, good. I have a directional microphone, and he is literally 4 feet away screaming at a roofer on my roof. And I'm like, I sure hope my directional microphone is working.
It's working.
Okay, good. Thank you for confirming. Let me go back into sharing, and we will dive into a buyer scenario. What's the most common buyer scenario right now? I'm waiting for rates to go down, right? That's just idiocy. And we're going to walk through why that is not smart. It's so funny too, because the irony is that buyer thinks they're the savviest bastard on the planet, right? So the problem with that is if they wait for rates to go down, what's going to happen? Bidding wars are bad.
More buyers in the market will qualify.
Exactly.
More competition, and possibly normally in a normal market, when rates go down, prices go up.
Exactly. And accelerate, right? They go up fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even sprinkle a little more fear in that, Allison, if you're having that conversation, right? I say bidding wars are back. Escalator clauses are back. Waiving everything is back. And they go,
that's good.
That sounds terrible, Ed. And I go, well, the good news for us, literally today, rates have gone down. We're at 6.5. And it's going to go lower because the economic indicators are that there's a 90% likelihood the Fed at their next open market committee meeting is going to do a 25 basis point price reduction. And I'm kind of glad we're having this conversation, because a lot of realtors don't realize this. The Fed doesn't lower mortgage rates, but when Wall Street anticipates a Fed adjustment, it actually starts to behave as if that's already happened. And so you'll see mortgage rates decline in anticipation of a Fed action. So just remember, the next Fed meeting is September 19th. And all things indicate a price reduction, which means before the 19th, rates will have already gone down another 1/4 of a point or more, right? Because Wall Street behavior is based on optimism. Do they think the Fed's doing the right thing? Do they think it's going to have the desired effect? So that's, the other dialogue that's very effective in this circumstance is, you're not the only one that's been waiting, right? There's been a lot of people have stood pat because they had a baby, they got married, they got divorced, they had a death in the family, they had a job change, they had whatever, but they stayed put because they didn't want to give up their interest rate, or they didn't want to take on a new interest rate at 8% or whatever. Well, those people still need to move. And so when rates decline, they're all coming back, right? So how do we tackle that? Well, we want to paint a picture for our clients about the difference between opportunity costs and price appreciation, right? And just use math. Like, here's a good dialogue. Which would you rather do? Pay $600 for something and get 6.5% interest? Or wait 4 months and get in a bidding war and end up paying $750 for that same house just because now the rate's at 5%? It's a no-brainer, right? Especially when you...
That increases your property taxes too.
Right. And you know the saying, right, Allison? You marry the house, but date the rate. that saying is for a good reason, which is the house, it's harder to change, but the rate, I can change, I can refi it 5 times if I want in the same year if rates keep trending downward. So marry the house but date the rate means buy now and then refi. Here's another great technique and dialogue for buyers. Because sellers are nervous and motivated, I get sellers to pay for 2-1 buy downs all the time. I did an analysis a few months ago on my last 12 months of buyers, and 80% of them got 2-1 buy downs because the sellers were motivated and scared, right? That 2-1 buy down allowed that client to have, instead of, 6 3/4 or 7, they were at 5 for a year, and then at 6 for another year, 12 months, and then 7 for 28 years. But in those first 24 months, the bet is that they're going to be able to refi into something lower and keep their interest rate below 7. That's just a smart technique. And we got somebody else to pay for it, right? So keep these tools in your toolbox or arrows in your quiver when you're working with buyers, and let them know that, man, are you lucky that you met me? Because I'm hyper skilled at this, right? All right. So what does it sound like, right? I want to wait till rates go down. I hear you. Nobody likes today's rate. But let's look at this together. If rates drop, demand spikes. And as Allison pointed out, prices climb. And suddenly you're competing in multiple offers again. Buying now means less competition and more negotiation power. And here's the beauty. Rates are temporary. Price is permanent. You can always refi later, but you can't go back and buy at today's price when the market heats up again. So waiting could cost you tens of thousands more than the savings from a lower rate. You could even quantify it for if I'm in a specific conversation with a specific buyer, I already know the price range they're looking at. So I can use numbers to illustrate what I'm describing. Right? So let's pretend it's a buyer who's looking for a $700,000 house. Hey, Joe, what if we could get you that $700,000 house for $650 and get the seller to pay for a 2-1 buy down? Would you rather do that or wait 3 months and now the list price for the house is $750, but you got to pay $800 because of a bidding war? Whereas you could have gotten it for $650 with a 2-1 buy down and then refied 4 months from now because rates go down, right? It really helps to use, illustrations or specific examples when you're in a one-on-one conversation with a buyer who's got a price point in mind. Allison, you have your hand up. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, thank you. Would you mind if I use this as a video script? I can even give you credit.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
And tag you maybe. Yeah. Okay. It'll take me a few days. I just hired my VA back on for part-time. So that's a great script for video.
It's just such a kind of a fundamental understanding that a lot of people don't think of, right? All they know is the here and now. And they're like, man, rates are too high. I even have a hard time saying that because here's another dialogue. Do you know what the average interest rate for mortgages is over the last 50 years?
Higher.
7.2. So is 6.5 really that bad? No. Right? The reason we have these conversations so often is because rates got down into the low 3s and the 2s in some cases. Make a video about this, Allison. That was stupid. Our government up. It never should have gotten that low. That was detrimental to our economy, and we paid for it dearly.
Well, and now people's expectations are I'm waiting for a 2 point something rate. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's silly. That's never going to happen again.
And Lord, I sure hope it never happens again, because if it does, that means our government screwed up again. You know, like we all heard Biden talked about transitory inflation, like it was just this temporary thing. And I'm not being critical of him. He's not the first guy that said that. The first guy that said that was in the 80s. And guess what happened to rates then? 18%. We just are too thick to learn from our past. So you and I, we're way smarter than that. We see what happens and we know what is going to happen next. Here's another dialogue that you guys can use when you're talking to other agents that you want to join your team. Good agents know how to make money in the current market. Great agents know how to anticipate the next. Come work with me and I'll help you do that, right? So little bit of a recruiting plug there. But that conversation, now back to buyers, is very powerful because you're giving them some tangible numbers that they can sort of see themselves in. So I talked to my lender. I said, I want to put together just a 1-page or even just a meme, like a graph. Here's your option. And here's what the difference in payment would be, right? 600,000 at 6.5 with the 2-1 buy down. So now it's 4.5 versus 800,000 at 4.5. And it's probably, if I feel like I'm stuttering. I apologize. But my brain is really fired up. I've been a lender for 30 years. So I know a lot about mortgage rates, right? If you take the difference between those payments, it's actually going to be astronomically cheaper to buy now with the 2-1 buy down than what it will be if rates go down. And I do believe they will go down, but into the 5s, not into the 4s. Right? So have those conversations, get buyers off the fence. It's better to buy now. And I'll tell you one last thing and then we'll open up to questions, I think is what I've got next. It's not just Ed hoping and dreaming about rates going down. The federal government has to refinance trillions of dollars of our federal debt this year. That's why Trump is screaming at Jerome Powell. And Jerome Powell is not doing anything, and I think it's out of spite. And I hate that, because you don't get to do your job differently because you don't like somebody. That affects all of us, right? And you're injuring an industry and you're injuring all taxpayers out of spite that you hold for somebody. That's selfish. So, but the bottom line is rates are going to go down before the end of the year. So it'd be smarter to buy in, August, September, October than in November, December, when rates go down and people come back to the market. Does that make sense? All right. I always try and save the last 5 minutes for open Q&A. If somebody has a difficult conversation they're going to have, I'm happy to tell you what I would say. I also should, I know Christina has seen this before. I know Allison has seen this before, but I don't know if Mike has seen this before. I created a custom GPT that if you ever wanted to know what I would say about a specific topic, you can go to whatwouldEdsay.com. And as long as you have a chat GPT account, even a free one, it'll let you in and you can ask it questions and it'll tell you what I would say. So make use of that and give me feedback. Let me know what you think. All right. WhatwouldEdsay.com. All right. What questions do you guys have? Christine, you looked up like you might have something. Are you good?
Let's see what you would say. I have a co-op, uh, has to go through board approval and all that. Anyway, it's a 2 bedroom, 2 bath. If you're on a higher floor, like 3, 4, anything above like the third floor, they're selling for like 650, 670. Okay. This is on the first floor, 2 bedroom, 2 bath. So one has 2 bathrooms. I have it at 675. It's not getting any offers, nothing, because I believe because it's on the first floor and it's facing a barbecue area where people are going to be hanging out and grilling their sausages and stuff.
Right.
So I don't, it's such, I mean, what a big impact, if a difference from being on the first floor to just maybe 2 floors higher. So I don't know what to tell them because I'm going to have to bring down the price because there's no offers at all. And it's
How
been
long?
listed a month.
30 days. Okay. So I touched on this in the presentation today, but I'll dig a little deeper. I like to do that 2-step price reduction. Remember when I said you're giving them hope? That's on purpose, right? So what I would do with this seller is I would say, hey, Sharon, or whatever their name is, I'm not saying we need to reduce the price today, but the market is giving us feedback. And it's giving us feedback in the form of a lack of traffic and a lack of offers. And you can use that 30 days on market, 20 showings, and no offers as a widely held, this is true in every market type of axiom. That's why I use the word axiom, because I want them to think, oh, wow, this isn't just me, or this isn't just Seattle, or whatever. So it's inoculate them to market's giving us feedback, and that feedback is that we're overpriced. But I'm not saying we should need to reduce it today. But I do think if we're still in the same situation a week from today, we're going to want to reduce the price at that point, because then at that point we'll be at 37 days on the market or whatever it is. Use facts. Today we're at 28, then we go to 35 or whatever, because that gives them this for the weekend. They're like, man, I sure hope something comes in.
I did reduce it from $6.99 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, and the other thing is make sure they know that you're doing this too. Like,
right.
We are good at our jobs, but there's also an element of surprise that can happen, right? Like, I'm surprised that the market shifted as much as it did so quickly. That doesn't change our plan of attack, though. So, if the market's given us feedback that we're too high, let's watch it for the next week. I'm going to ramp up all my digital marketing and push this thing out as much as we can in the hopes that we can find a buyer. But we don't want to just sit idly, right? And then what ends up happening is over the weekend, your client is going to be thinking, I wonder what Christine's going to recommend for the next price reduction, right? While they're praying that an offer comes in, they're going to also be thinking, but if it doesn't, what are we going to do? So sometimes I'll inoculate my client at the first conversation. If it's a big, like if we miss the mark, I'll say, we're going to talk next week, and it probably is not going to be just a little $5,000 reduction, right? Oh, really? Well, yeah. I mean, no showings or no offers, that's not a good sign.
Right.
But I'll tell them, I'll do an updated CMA. We'll see if there's some data that has come out since we went on the market that maybe is telling us, one direction or another. And then let's pray together while we wait, right? And then if, we could talk about price bracketing. Do you remember that part of my listing presentation? So, I never list anything at $6.99 ever. And here's the reason why. A buyer, any buyer, they start their search on their phone, right? So they go to their favorite app or website and it says, what's the price range you want to look? So if I'm listed at $699, $999, the guy who's looking from $650 to $700 would see it. But the guy who's looking from $700 to $750 wouldn't. And if all I did was open or increase at $1, I would capture both audiences. So I would double the number of eyeballs by listing it at 700 even. So if you looked in my MLS at my listings, they're all big round number thresholds. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing a CMA I'm in Seattle, so our median is $1 million. But let's say I'm doing a CMA and a house comps out at 915. I'd list it at 900 or 885. I'd also list that at 900 because it's worth fudging it one direction or the other to double the number of eyeballs that it sees. Now, the ideal is the 915 being listed at 900 scenario, because that way buyers see it online and go, wow, that's a good deal. Let's go check it out, honey. Right?
Right.
So I have the price bracketing conversation with every seller because that inoculates them to, okay, Ed may steer me one way or the other, depending, right?
Right.
So I'm saying all this because your next threshold is probably 650.
That's what I was thinking, 650. Yeah.
But
Well, it's showing it Wednesday, so we'll see how that goes. Somebody just emailed me.
And you've got an additional dialogue that you can share with your client. So don't go to 649, 500 or whatever. Go to 650 even and tell them, we're doing this for a specific reason. Let me explain, because that just increases your credibility and your expertise in their mind, right? Because they've never thought of that, but you have.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes. Thank
Cool.
you.
Well, we're at the bottom of the hour. I always love hanging out with you guys, you ladies. We lost Mike, so can't say the euphemism anymore. But have an awesome day. I'll see you guys next Friday. All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.